Okay, it's time for another episode of Culinary Mechanic. So, you know, I would have to say that I consider myself to be a pretty simple guy. And for the record, my wife is in the background right now laughing because that's how it works. I don't know that she'd consider me simple, but whatever. Um, And today, my guest is a guy who is the CEO and co founder of something called Clear Cogs, and it's a piece of AI that's helping restaurants really order better and plan better. And to be perfectly honest with you, I'm like, I don't know if I get it, but I love the idea of helping restaurants do things smoother, better. I think AI in the last couple of years obviously has just gone bonkers. And that's fucking awesome. So, um, I think we're gonna have some fun. His name is Matt Wampler. Clear Cogs is his company, and here we go. You're listening to the Culinary Mechanic podcast. I'm your host, Simon Zaturka, the founder of Culinary Mechanic, a restaurant advisory firm focused on making kitchens and restaurants run like well-oiled machines. This podcast, we aim to bring you insights, strategies, tools, and tactics, and sometimes just good old advice and stories that are going to help you run your restaurant better. I hope you dig it because honestly, it's a real labor of love. One thing you could do that would help me a whole lot is to go anywhere that you listen to podcasts and leave a 5-star review. That'll help get the word out so that more people will hear this podcast, and hopefully we can help more restaurants run just a little better. Now, please enjoy the show. Today, I'm joined by Matt Wampler of Clear Cogs. Matt, welcome to the show, man.
Simon, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to my culinary tune-up.
We're gonna jump
I'm
into the toolbox pretty quick here.
starting out strong with my dad jokes.
I like it. I like it. I think Culinary Mechanic, honestly, I started it with a little tongue in cheek. I was like, this will be a fun way to I envision like a website that looks like a mechanic shop, that you can go and, oh, I'll get a tune up or an oil change for your restaurant. But I've never gotten that far. But maybe. So, however, in the essence of like really distilling down to mechanic, let's just press on the gas and say, how'd you get into the industry, man?
Like so many people in the restaurant industry, I just happened to find myself in it. Some guy had run his Jimmy John's franchise into the ground and needed a patsy to get out of the lease. And I was the 21-year-old kid with nothing to lose in the right place at the right time and, found myself owning a restaurant.
Awesome. How did that go? Like, I mean, you start going like it looks like based on what I've seen, you were there for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it went a lot like the first episode of The Bear, which I definitely turned off the first couple times I watched it because it was a little too real for me. Except I wasn't a Michelin trained chef. I was a, half derelict kid that just graduated college trying to figure all this stuff out. But no, I mean, it was a total turnaround. I mean, anybody in the restaurant industry knows what a turnaround looks like. They were down to 4 employees. The air conditioning was out. The grease trap was overflowing. I mean, it was a disaster. And so it was a good time to be 21 and to go work through all the problems. But a fun experience and learned a lot.
Nice. How I mean, so I guess I want to hear a little bit more about like the growth of that. Like how do you take that and move it forward to I mean, my guess is you had more than one after that.
Yeah, after turning it around, we opened up 4 more of them. Somebody gave me some advice the night before I took over the restaurant, and it was, hey, look, I know you want to go change everything on day one. Don't. You're going to scare everybody away. Go in quiet, go in slow, roll your sleeves up, under promise, over deliver, put in the work. And so that's really what I did. I wasn't the smartest restaurateur because I didn't know what I was doing. But, and so instead of working smarter, I worked harder, and, I showed up early. You clean one thing a day, and sure enough, 90 days later, you've got a pretty clean store, and,
Yeah,
set the culture, build the team. And slowly but surely, we took it from doing something like 400,000 to 1.2 million over the next 18 months.
that's amazing. That's amazing. Um, you know, I think I'm fascinated by the idea of, well, I'm fascinated by AI. Like I'm not like I just my simple brain has cooked chicken since the 80s. So I don't know if I always get it, but I love the idea that you went from making sandwiches using, good sort of restaurant tactics to get through your day to all of a sudden now you got a something that is using tech to help restaurateurs kind of get to the next level. I mean, tell us about that trend. Like, how does that happen for you? How does that
Yeah.
happen? How does it happen? This is the best way to say it.
Well, it's never a straight line. I don't think I've really talked about this. When we first started out, it was really just how can we provide better analytics for restaurants, reporting, insights, just, I think we looked at doing, price optimization. So you'd know how much to, raise prices of, various menu items. And, you know, the AI thing was interesting because it came later. We were working on a project with, I think we had 18 grad students doing their Masters of Quantitative Management at Duke, and they were helping work on this project, of analytics. And on the side, we started playing around with machine learning, and it blew us away how powerful and accurate this stuff was. And it truly wasn't like we were chasing AI. It was AI is the magical solution to this specific problem. And from there we were off to the races, and we've embraced it ever since.
I love it. I I think that kind of stuff it just blows my mind because again, it's just not the world I was ever taught in. I mean, I'm still getting used to my cell phone, man.
Hey,
You
it's
know?
not the world I come from either. I mean, like I spent a lot more time cleaning grease traps than I have working in the AI space. And I think that that's really important. You know, Technology for so long has been built by like technology firms that don't really understand restaurants, don't get what it's like to be on the ground. I mean, we built this from a operator's perspective. How do we make technology easier to use than to not use, right? I don't want to have to mandate some general manager use our technology. I want that general manager to say, man, this makes my life easier. I'm definitely going to use that. And
Nice.
I think if you just have empathy for restaurants, and I know I stress that every day because we're providing recommendations on what to prep, who to staff. It's like every one of these numbers, if you get wrong, somebody's gonna have a really bad day. Um, you know, yeah,
Yeah. Uh you hit on something that is really interesting. It's always in the back of my mind, and it goes back to like how a kitchen is like every step of the way, how a kitchen is designed, right? Like I can't tell you how many times I'm like, there should be a fucking trash hole right there, right? There should be a hole in the stainless with a trash can below it. Like, who designed this and why is that sink down there? Right? All now, okay, zoom forward into the future, and I can see a world where I've worked with tech solutions that as a chef, I'm like, what are these 504 reports? Like, what does that mean? How does that work? Like, where is the help to figure it out?
it's
Right?
500 different restaurants that want a different report, and we're just gonna throw them all in there and let you sift through them.
Oh my goodness. But and it's and then I start to think about myself as a manager, or even as I got into like managing multiple restaurants, looking over and talking to a sous chef or a chef and going, hey man, this is what we're gonna do. And they'd look at me and go, oh, I don't understand why we have to do that. I'm like, you're going to need to be patient and you're going to need to learn how to do this because when you do, your life will get easier. Because there's no like, hey man, honestly. There's no benefit in me making your life harder, right? You're not going to give me better results so that I can go to my boss and go, "Hey, we got worse results," right? Like that's not how this works. There's no world in which that is. So
Well,
I'm happy to hear that obviously you're trying to take what you learned and how you felt and bring that to the forefront, because I think that's pretty important, man.
well, look,
And not enough companies do that.
the truth is nobody's getting into restaurants, the hospitality industry, because they want to go search through 500 reports, right? They get into it for the people, for the food,
Yeah.
the experiences, right? Like you just self-select, and those are the people that are great. The general manager that's great at building a team, great at serving customers, he's a great general manager. But he might not be good at analytics. He might not want to look at reports. He might be some kid like me who's ADHD and dyslexic and has no interest in reviewing line by line, all of this. And so, I think that we're in an interesting time where technology's become incredibly powerful and it's never going to be able to replace, the people side of the
Right.
business, creating those experiences. But it is really good at the analytics. And, if we can learn as an industry and tech companies like us can, find creative ways to adopt it into operations, I think it could fundamentally change everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think I constantly hear conversations about, oh, AI is going to replace this or it's going to replace that. Sure, it could, but I think that if you can use it, if it's a better mousetrap, dude, use the thing, man. You know, I think that using what it brings to us and then using that to your advantage makes you run a little faster. Awesome. You know, get down the road farther. If you've ever found yourself saying, there's got to be a better way to run a restaurant, we should talk. Imagine no rifts between the front and back of house, joint spotless, people are excited to be at work, and you're making the money you've dreamed of. Listen, Culinary Mechanic is here with the strategies, systems, and tactics to help you have the restaurant where everyone wants to be. We're talking about sustainable change, systems that you can implement and execute day in, day out. If you'd like to find out more about how Culinary Mechanic can help you run your restaurant like a well-oiled machine, I'd like to invite you to use the link in the show notes to book a free 30-minute consultation call. Let's talk about it.
I'm compelled by one thing, and it's to answer this one question for every restaurant. What do I need to know today? Instead of going and sifting through reports and looking at my emails in the morning, like, how do I wake up and ask my restaurant co-pilot, like, what do I need to know? Well, tomato prices are up, and you ran out of this item last night, and you're going to need to adjust prices here. And you've also got, cinnamon rolls 86th on your online menu. You may want to reactivate those. Like, how do we get it so that we've got AI managing all of the data side of things and informing you of what you need to know? We're still a
Right.
little ways from getting there, but that's what consumes my time.
What do I need to know today? That's pretty damn good. I think if you had an acronym for that, what did I mean, there's.
See, the dyslexia, I can't even come up with the acronym.
I'm gonna write that down and I'll get back to you on that one. We'll come up with something flashy for you.
Sending it over
But
to the mechanic.
spin it in a gear. Um, I think it's all fascinating. Um, so tell me about like the biggest challenge. What is kicking your ass with clear cogs? Like, well, just I mean, what's the challenge of that business or of that of selling that model? Like, what's the challenge right now?
You know what? The challenge is always this. Getting something 90% of the way there for a restaurant is pretty much useless. And I think that, unfortunately, that's a lot of the technology we have. It's kind of one size fits all. It's kind of there, but it's hard to use. It's hard to set up. You got to maintain it, right? Like getting something 90% oftentimes is more detrimental than it is positive. So
Yeah.
we work to get things to 100%. And that means we need to go in and understand your brand and understand your operations and adapt to the technology to get that last 10%. And restaurants are all different. They all have different needs and different decision points. And so, look, I think the challenge is always, we have to understand your operation, or you need to have a clear understanding of your operation and what those key decision points are.
So I was talking recently with somebody, and we were kind of bantering back and forth, and she said to me, you know, I love it when I see a restaurant or a business that is clear about who they are, because gosh, it's really easy to interact with them. And I thought, well, that's kind of a dub, but it isn't, right? Like I can think about a lot of businesses, whether they be tech or whether they be restaurant, and they're not 100% clear of who they are and what they do best. So I think that, like, staring into the abyss of how does ClearCogs, bridge that last 10%. And I can imagine that there's some big fundamental challenges right there,
Well, I
right?
mean, how many people do you work with or talk with that could really explain why they do all of the things that they do? I mean, I'm genuinely curious.
15%.
Yeah.
I mean, I I have a notepad that sits behind my monitor here, and I think that my elevator pitches are in that, and sort of like all like my, who I am, what I do, and it's like, nope, that was last week. And it changes a little bit, or like, as I'm learning to, like, market myself, it's like I help this and do that. I'm like, oh fuck, that sucks, and scratch that out. So yeah, I can only imagine that, like, if I'm struggling that way, there's got to be a ton of people that struggle with the same thing. um
Yeah. I mean,
so
the
I think
challenge
that
is
that
this. We're not consultants, nor do we want to be consultants. I don't want to imagine how you run your restaurant. All I'm here to do is adapt, our forecasting technology, that last 10% to give you those decisions, those answers that you need each day. And if you don't know what those answers are, like it does become difficult. But, that's one of the reasons we tend to end up working with larger brands, where they've got a playbook and they're growing. Usually they've pretty well specced out what the brand is and have those systems in place.
That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you hope for, right? Like that, that's why you walk into I don't know, a Jimmy John's or a Starbucks, because you know what you're gonna get, right? Like that's the goal.
Well, that
Um,
said, I have a soft spot. I mean, like we were talking about Sean over at Cali Barbecue before this, right? Like, I do think that the heartbeat of our communities are our local independent restaurants. And, I feel a little bad, right? We're building these wonderful AI operations management systems for, these larger brands, and yet it's the heartbeat of our community that's often the last to get, this kind of technology. And so, one of the things that we're doing is we're trying to democratize AI. How can we take all of our learnings from, working with all these brands and productize it into a single click deploy product where, any restaurant can just activate it and have some of these tools. It's not quite the same. It's not going to be the, full bespoke system, but, just being able to know you're running out of chicken on Thursdays and it's costing you, you're losing out on X dollars of revenue as a result of that. Or, here's what you should expect to happen tomorrow. I think we can do that for a lot of brands. And we're actually just launching on Toast, and, we're giving the vast majority of that away for free.
Man, I love the synergies of the of the pieces of equipment, right? Like the idea that you're going to be in Toast, because I can tell you that I worked for a company, and we were using some version of micros that I feel like was like equivalent to an Apple IIe, you know. For those of you that aren't old enough to
3700.
know what a 2E is, the 2E came before Mac. Before it was Macintosh. Um, but we went from that to Toast, and like kitchen display systems, and my whole life changed. I was like, holy shit, like we're moving at light speed here, right? Like and then the reporting of that. So I can only imagine that if you're able to take what you're doing and attach it to it, like again, it's you're on the people movers at the airport, man. Like you got some assistance pushing you forward. That's a good thing,
Amen.
right? Like I love it when I see nothing makes me happier than when I see a small restaurant and you walk in and it's like, okay, somebody has probably worked for a corporate restaurant. Um, oh, I got the perfect example. All right, so I'm up here in Seattle, and every year I take a quick little 3 day, 4 day to get out because my dogs cannot handle fireworks, and my neighborhood is like a war zone at the 4th of July and New Year's. So we go to this little town. It's called Squim, and it's like way too many vowels in that in to say Squim. But I came across this like oyster bar because we're in Washington and you got to eat oysters, and it's like what is it? It's like Dirty Girls Oyster Company or something like that, right? Salty Girls. And this place has like little printed signs, and it's like they are managing your expectation. Like, please be patient. The bartender is also the oyster shucker, and there's like rules and like. But every piece of the menu was so well thought out. Every piece of the experience. And I said to the young lady who was shucking my oysters and pouring my beer, I was like, "Tell me about the owner." Oh, well, he worked somewhere in San Francisco for like 10 years in a big restaurant. And he just wanted to come home, and I was like, "Well, that makes sense." It's like that makes me happy is when somebody has taken their singular restaurant and utilize the knowledge that they have to create an experience that is so well thought out. Because too many of them are like, wee.
Well, all right. So I'm an ex-sandwich slinger. I'm not a chef by any means. You're like a classically trained like culinary chef, right?
Yes. Yes.
Do they teach any of that in culinary school?
Of what? The thinking out processes? No,
Yeah, how to have that oyster place be running like that.
no,
Yeah.
nobody teaches that. It's that is the Institute of Hard Knocks. That's it. I mean, it literally is, honestly, that's why I have a business of chef advisory and restaurant consulting because like I can teach people things that I've learned that nobody else teaches, right? My perfect example is I'm talking to a cook having who I know and I really respect the hell out of him. He's a great guy, probably, I don't know, 30 years old. Started off slinging pizzas and now he's like really into fine dining and he's like, Simon, sipping his coffee. He goes, my goal for this year is to be the best cook in the kitchen I'm in. And I was like, ah, boy. Can I posit something different? And he said, sure. Um, and he looks at me and he goes, what are you gonna throw at me right now? And I said, how about if you aim to be the third best cook in the kitchen and try to be the best teacher? And he's like, why on earth would I want to do that? And I said, because every time you take the knowledge that you have and expand and help somebody else, you expand your influence. When you expand your influence, your natural leadership grows. At the point that you're ready to become the manager or the leader of that little tribe that's running around the kitchen, you're going to be so well equipped to just naturally people will already listen to you because you're sharing the knowledge that you have. And he's like, nobody's ever said that to me before. And I said, I know, because not everybody says the stuff. Like I say things and people are like, what? What are you talking about? That can't be real. I'm like, it's real, I swear. But it's the mythical planet of leadership, right? It's just a different thing. And so I think that it's great the acknowledgement that nobody's teaching that stuff of how to systematize. I feel like that is a product of fuck up after fuck up after fuck up after fuck up and knowing your audience because you want things to be systemized, right? your small town restaurant guest hasn't had big city restaurant experiences where they know how to do it. Like they haven't learned how to be the perfect guest yet. So they need it spelled out for them. And I think that that's important to like understand. That goes a long way to understanding your audience,
All
right?
right, does it need to be that way? Is every restaurant different? And you have to learn the school of hard knocks for your individual restaurant to set those systems and procedures up? Or is most of this something that someone like you could come in on day one and say, like, 90% of the problems you're going to have, you don't need to have. Let's solve them at the beginning.
That is that is incumbent upon the proprietors, the owners, to decide what kind of like if they want to have. I will be honest, there are some restaurateurs that like the chaos. They grew up in chaos. They want the feel of the hustle and bustle and the shuck and jive of it all. And there's others that really want to make money, and they want to make money with the least amount of friction, and they want things to go really well. And so I think within that, could you say yes, this is what's going to happen, 80% of the time or 90% of the time? Sure, you could. But I don't know if everybody wants that. Like they should want it, right? But um, I think that it's all based on how we want to feel, right? Because some people love that grinding restaurant feel. And I'm not gonna lie, there's some delis that you go into. Uh, where I was in Philly, and I went into a deli, and it was like guys talking shit, and then I was in a like a really high end Italian, it's on high end Italian ingredient style store, right? Like all the cheeses and all the meats and everything. And the whole shtick of the place is the young kids behind the counter just talking shit to you the whole time, and it's like it was a little disruptive at first, and then I was like, wait, this is their thing, right? And so it was systemized. No, they forgot to ring. Honestly, I think they forgot to ring up half the stuff, and they were giving away more free samples than anything. But people were lined out the door to get into this place just to have somebody sort of spew stuff at them. It was great.
Well, if also if
So
you're giving out half the stuff for free, I'd probably line up for that too.
good cheese too. Oh, makes me happy. Yeah, I mean, I love you know, I think that there's nothing better than a good sandwich, so I don't have a pecking order on that, right? Like I think that if you have a great sandwich, that can be just as life-changing uh as a great fine meal. I mean, that brisket Philly that you did a couple weeks online, that you had me like drooling, like my phone got wet, man.
I gotta tell you, man, it was pretty darn good. That turned out.
Yeah, I mean that for me is the magic of the magic of the future we're in. It's like scrolling through. I'm like, hey, there's Matt Wampler, and he's got brisket. Wait, stop.
Hey,
You
there was a
know,
lot of pressure on that. I don't do briskets very often. I always feel a little bit like my manhood's on the line that, don't dry the brisket out. Like, you got to get it just right. And, my two briskets a year, plus I'm sending it over to, Sean and Charlie Eblin and like, guys that really do barbecue. So I got to show up and that one came out good.
that's awesome.
Simon, I got one last question for you. So
Yeah, man.
you've been doing this, you've been living in the restaurant world for decades, right? What do you love about the restaurant industry?
Huh. Um, well, I'll tell you, I can sum that up in something that I think I put on my website and it was or in my bio or something. And I show up for the food and I stay for the people. you know um I, for lack of a better term, I grew up kind of a medium to big size fat kid. Like I like to eat. I like to eat lots, and I like to eat different things. And so getting to be in the kitchen and like you know taste this and taste that and just kind of experiencing what different things are. Now as I'm older, the thing is to find the different markets to find like the spice round, to find the spice aisle, right? I've got a Indian and Pakistani grocery store that is the size of a warehouse about 3 miles from me. And the spice aisle is like the size of your average Walgreens. It's massive. I'm like, oh, this is great. And it's like, I've never seen this before. Throw one of those in there. So really it's about the food, but then the people. I think as I got a little older and definitely in my 40s, the thing that I love the most about restaurants was the growth of the people around me and what I could affect in that. Seeing people's aha moments um, every day. Like even if there's one in 50 people I encounter, like I'm winning here, right? Like this is good stuff. So that's my answer is food and people, But yeah, that's it.
Man, there's something to that, right? There's a camaraderie in restaurants, like
Sure.
amongst the staff. Nursing, maybe, military, there aren't a whole lot of things where you feel like you are in, the firefight together. And something about a busy kitchen in the middle of a rush, it's
No.
like a well-oiled machine, hopefully.
Oof, hopefully. That's what I live for. I think the other side of that for me is there's an element of that community, right? Like that's
Yeah.
what I mean. I dropped out of college to cook because I loved like as much as I loved being in the kitchen and with those people, there's nothing better than like sitting on the bar stool at the end of the night and just, talking about whatever, whether you're talking about the 100-year-old neon in the dive bar you're in, or you're talking about that whatever dish that you made, or hey, did you see that sauce that chef made tonight? That kind of thing was always um pardon me, really fulfilling. So I got a question that I've been starting to ask people on this podcast, and it's sort of a two-parter. And it's honestly it's my new obsession, and it kind of goes like this. What is a win in your day is part A, and part B is how do you win your day on a regular basis?
That's a great question, and one that I have never really thought about. Like, I can tell you what the win is. So, like,
Okay.
I love hearing things from our customers. I love when, somebody sends back a reports like, you nailed it today. It was perfect, right? Or, yeah, could you just have this one thing? It would change, the way we operate. Like, I love talking with customers. Um, how do I win the day? You know, I think that's a good question. How do I win the day? It's discipline. So, I have an ever-growing list of to-dos, and there are a lot of things I don't like to do. I love doing this. I can come talk with you for 3 hours. It's how do you
You
stay
are welcome
disciplined?
anytime you want.
Just keep it rolling. We'll go Joe Rogan style and just roll right
All
on.
day long.
Nah, but it's discipline, getting all the things done that, need to get done.
I love it. That is one of the better answers, honestly. I love it.
It's a tough
The
question.
positive feed. It really has begun to shape a lot of kind of what I talk about. Like what is a win in your day is so powerful, right? Because I'll be honest, lately a win for me is finishing work at the time I said I'm going to finish work,
Oh man, that's a great one.
right? Like
Doesn't
if
happen to me very often. Yeah, but I totally
no,
get that.
no, I mean, and so like after 30 years of being in the business and I've been married for 22 years. Actually next month is 22 years. And my wife put up with a whole shit ton of stuff for me for the first probably 20. There's still bullshit. I mean, I'm a man. It's how I'm wired. But I'm much more intentional now about like I'm not in the restaurant. I don't have as many excuses about oh that this happened or that happened. And most importantly, it's my focus now. How do I okay, I have 4 hours till the end of my day and I have a lot of things on my to-do list because you just said it, right? Like my to-do list can get long, right? But all right, let's headphones on or whatever, shut the door and let's get down to it. and be intentional about what we get done, so that uh it's when it's time to get up and go turn on the radio and cook dinner and be have time with the family, that's super important. So
How
yeah,
about it?
winning my day is pretty big focus right now.
How about a shout out to the wives of all of the restaurateurs and chefs? Because yeah, that's my experience as well. We have to be difficult to be married to. I assume that we're good cooks, and that makes up for some of it.
Yeah, I mean, I I always there was a few years where I bullshitted myself into believing that I was present when I wasn't when I was home. And then there was a few years where I genuinely, like, I figured out, like, no, what do I need to do? I need to drive the extra 10 minutes the long way home, so that when I get home, I'm already down off the adrenaline mountain. Like, my day is completely gone. And when I walk in the house, I am present. And I think that for me solved a lot of things. But then also understanding, like, okay, enough is enough, right?
One of the biggest things that I've taken away, having shifted from, owning and operating restaurants to being on the technology side of restaurants is, on the technology side, everything is really important, but it's not very urgent. And on the restaurant side, everything's incredibly urgent. It's not always important, but like, the toilet gets clogged. Like you got to go deal with that right away. And so even when you're off, you are never really off. You're always kind of just waiting for the next urgent thing to come up.
Yeah. I think that there was a point in my life where the phone was the devil.
Yeah,
Like, if that fucking thing was ringing, man, Jesus, Satan's talking to you right now.
no question.
uh, well, Matt, I can't thank you enough for coming to play with me, like rolling around the sandbox and getting a little dirty. It's good stuff. Um, I'm going to put in the show notes your links and handles, so that the people out there can find you and find Clear Cogs. I truly appreciate your time and coming to play with us, and just, I don't know, shooting the shit about what is real in restaurants and tech.
Simon, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.